Hi, I wanted to talk about darkness. I've shared in a previous video that I finally felt this moment of self-love, sincere, genuine, real, 100% authentic self-love. And that was amazing. However, a few hours later, or especially in the morning, the next day when I wake up again with anxiety. Or I wake up with a heavy chest, or a burden, or whatever it is. And this has been a trend for me for the last few years, especially. I have struggled with self-loathing, very harsh inner critic for a long time. I started to notice it when I was about 29. That was about the time when I finished grad school and moved to New York. I started working at a hedge fund and started living in a new city. And maybe that contributed to it. But that was the first time when I realized that my inner critic was extremely harsh. I was criticizing myself for fair and completely unfair things, like my looks, my brain power, my sense of humor. I thought that I wasn't funny enough. And I criticized myself for that. And it was actually very dark for me on the inside. And although on the outside, I was being very positive, very outgoing, but on the inside, I was miserable. And after a massive heartbreak, I started to do personal growth for the first time. I started doing therapy, I started doing regression therapy. Interestingly enough, when I became aware of how nasty I behaved towards myself, from the time when I started, I had the first experience opening my heart and becoming aware and learned what trust was. Since then, things actually took a turn for the worse for me, not for the better. And that was going on more or less for 10 years. So much so that when I quit drinking, and that was maybe a couple years ago, life became completely miserable. While I was still drinking, I would at least have a good time with alcohol in hand. Don't talk about the next day, but that day I was doing great. Minus alcohol, my life lost all color. And it felt like I was submerged underwater. And every once in a while, just enough to grab some air, and that would be seeing friends or feeling good for a change, or crying watching a romantic comedy, or having like some good moment in life. And then going down to the depth of my psyche. And it was not nice. It was dark. And this was going on for 10 years, and especially 5 years was completely tough, because I quit my job, a nice cushy job at the World Bank, and I started out on my own, and I worked in a fintech startup, and that's a super volatile, very changing environment, very stressful. I did not have a life for 5 years, really. And for most of the time, my startup was failing or I was scrambling to make it work. So I didn't even have any external reason to feel good. So I would struggle most of the days. Some days, even getting out of bed was an accomplishment, which I wrote down in my diary of small victories. Once I decided to measure my mood when I realized that I didn't like this. I am miserable most of the time. What is going on? So I decided to measure my mood the same way, actually in the same app where you measure your period days and your moods for women. So that's what I used to measure my mood. And basically it was a pink slip on every day when I was feeling heavy or moody or down or sad. And after I looked back at the calendar after 5 or 6 weeks, I saw that the calendar was entirely pink. So I just said, okay, I understand that my life sucks right now and I'm losing friends and I cannot maintain my lifestyle. And it's bad news after bad news. But this is my life and I only have one. So I better live it like I have something to write about at the end. So I started to actively implement mood boosting measures. And at around the same time, I also enrolled in a shamanic practitioner course in upstate New York. So I was doing all of these things and I developed at least 10 or 15 different tools for how to boost my mood when I wake up and I find myself in a bad mood. And the shamanic practices also helped. I did not really expect it to, but it did. It helped me shed a lot of heavy emotions and all the old programs. And I kept doing the past life regression therapy in parallel. So I was doing a lot of inner work. But you know what, guys? Even with doing all of that, it still felt like I'm only coming to the surface for some air every once in a while. And then I'm going back into the dark, deep place. And I think that one of the major reasons why it did not help, all of those mood boosters did not really make a dramatic difference, is because, think about it, when you're in a bad mood, do you really want to apply the mood boosting behaviors or techniques to yourself? When I'm in a bad mood, I know that dancing for 15 minutes would help me. Guess what? I don't feel like dancing, even for a minute. I don't even feel like listening to music. Forget about dancing. So what I found that helped me the most was actually having to help somebody else. I think this is probably the most effective tool that I've discovered for myself. And this is why I started practicing past life regression therapy. Really helped me and made a big difference in quality of my life. So I highly recommend, if you have something, any way of helping people, whatever that may be, start practicing that, especially on those days when you feel down and when you are struggling. The reason it helps, you probably know, you get to get outside of yourself. Basically, you get over yourself. And when you get over yourself, everything shifts. It shifts immediately. Fast forward to pandemic. Even before the pandemic, my startup collapsed, finally. It collapsed because I was completely burned out. I lost my venture capital partner, due to a domino effect, and I did not have the energy and the strength to do a next iteration and pivot again. And so I just stopped. I just stopped swimming and I stopped trying. I actually did try for a few months, but then I realized that I couldn't do it. And so imagine, I tried to find a job, I couldn't find a job. My savings were gone. I seemed to be unemployable. Life sucked. And then it gets worse. My only brother dies from a complication from COVID. Hey, I cannot even describe it. I've lost my father, I've lost my ex-fiance, and I've lost a very close friend in my lifetime. And so I thought I knew grief and I thought I grieved enough in my life, but this was a whole new level of grieving. So I reached the submerged level that I have not experienced before. I was down most of the time. It was not even down because I got so disoriented. I couldn't even tell which way is up, which way is down. It was just surreal. I could not sleep. And during the day, I felt like I was sleeping because I still could not process him dying. And so it was just insane all around. And so that happened on February 29th. And now we are August 6th or 7th. I think it's 7th today. So what happened in the last few months? At first, it got even worse. After feeling disoriented, I just felt so much loss and so much grief. And everything that I had worked towards in terms of self-love. Self-love has been the central motive for me in the entire personal growth journey because I had such a harsh inner critic this entire time. So what I did, first of all, I started practicing past life regression therapy and I started to regress people. Anybody and everybody I could. Everybody who agreed to be regressed by me, I regressed them. I started doing live broadcasts for the Russian-speaking audience, and I started sharing about everything that I've done. If somebody needed money advice, or love advice, or emotion, and not relationship, love, self-love, I was sharing everything that I've learned in the last 14 years about all of those things. And every time that it resonated with somebody and I was able to help somebody, I helped myself and I felt better. And in parallel, I kept doing regression therapy and I was seeing a therapist here. And I was going to family constellations group. Then I added an energy healer, working with an energy healer. And also I had done a holotrope, I think it's called, session. Basically, it's a intense breathing session aiming to imitate rebirthing. And since that session, and it happened on June 14, things started to turn around for me. And what I mean by that is that I finally understood what was wrong with me this entire time. I saw that I was depressed. I became depressed the moment I was conceived. Can you imagine this? It sounds crazy, but if you think about it, and especially if you watch this video this far, chances are you may have the same condition. What happened in my case, the way I saw it, is that, you see, in order to incarnate, we have to lower our vibration. Imagine the beings of light, or light beings, however you want to call it, when they incarnate on earth, they have to become really dense. All the superpowers, what seems like superpowers to humans, are lost. It seems like the freedom itself is lost. While I saw that, I volunteered and I agreed to incarnate on earth, at the same time losing my freedom and losing my power and being reduced to this tiny human cell felt like hell, felt like a sentence. And while the guide, the person who was guiding our rebirthing experience, was saying, "Oh, feel the beauty of the moment you're being conceived. You can hear your mom's voice, ta-da-da-da-da." And I was feeling like, who cares about my mother's voice? I don't give a damn. Can I go back to the light? And when I realized that I was depressed since conception, it kind of made sense. And it felt very liberating, because finally I understood what was up with me. And from that moment onwards, in retrospect, I feel like things started to align. And I'm saying in retrospect because even though that on the day off, having that rebirthing experience and having that realization about this depression and coming to terms with having a human life, the next day I woke up and found myself in the dark again, submerged in a deep, dark place. And it felt like I'm starting over again. So I was again struggling with the darkness and heavy feelings, loss, grief, sadness, depression, feeling like the life has ended. And still trying to do whatever I could, still continuing with helping others. It's been tough. It gets better. So I kept doing everything that I could. So I did every method. I did sound healing meditations with Tom Kenyon. He has lots of free ones available on his website. Continuing with the regressions, doing regressions for other people, doing coaching, reflection, affirmations, money magnet, love magnet. What did I not do? And since that moment, I had several very, very important regressions, probably the most important regressions of my life, which one of which gave me the sense of inner freedom. And the other, again, dwelled on this depression during conception, or depression about being incarnated, or resistant, as my therapist called it. So those two plus one more, and that one was about, actually it was about money, money and power. So I think like those three regressions together combined, each one chipping away at this feeling of darkness, really helped. The one that the regression about inner freedom, that was a regression when I saw myself as a gladiator in Byzantium. And this gladiator was the longest surviving gladiator in the arena. And he was trying to defy the odds for the gladiators, which is basically probability of one to be killed and to die in the arena. And he seriously believed that he can survive and walk away a free man. And so in this one fight against a tiger, the management of the arena decided to even out the odds for the tiger, and they shot arrows in behind the gladiator's knees. And so imagine, I see myself as this gladiator fighting a tiger who was shot in the most cowardly way. And so I see this man, myself, die with this question: why did they do it? I was so good. Should have I changed my image? Should I have I changed my hair? Should I change my tattoos? What should have I done to avoid this? And what I realized a few days after this regression actually was that I was asking the wrong questions. And the irony was that this man valued freedom above all, yet he did not have the inner freedom. That was because this man felt deprived of freedom. Meanwhile, the inner freedom was right in front of him the entire time. All he needed to do was to trust and accept. Trust that the circumstance that he found himself in was the best, that the universe conspired to construct the perfect surrounding for him to learn the lesson he came to learn in the most beautiful, smoothest, most expedite way. And concentrate on finding what that lesson was, what that circumstance was best to learn. So trust and accept would set the man free. And then he would be fighting, even as a gladiator, even as a slave. He would be fighting as a free man, regardless whether he dies or lives to see another day, he is free. And the parallel that I saw with my life was that I realized that I felt deprived for most of my life, deprived of financial resources, deprived of beauty, deprived of a certain look, deprived of a better accent or no accent, accent-free speech, this and that. And the truth was that I was always trying to manipulate life and force it to fit my vision of it, my ego's vision of it, instead of trying to see how this circumstance and this situation can teach me and what it can teach me in the most perfect way. What is this situation perfect for? And accepting this situation, accepting the money limitation or accent limitation, communication limitation, looks limitation as an opportunity to learn maybe self-acceptance, to learn inner beauty, to connect better with myself so that I can communicate more effectively, to overcome my accent. But instead, I tried to use my willpower to force and bend my life the way I wanted it to be. What did I do? I became smart, I became hardworking, I became very enterprising, I became manipulative in order to achieve the things that I thought would give me love, freedom. Those were the two things that I've always craved in my life. And guess what? I was never free or felt loved or lovable. And imagine, it was the day of my birthday. I turned 45, and I had just finished writing down that regression story, and it hit me. It hit me that the freedom and love was right in front of me my entire life. And that I can just take it by choosing to trust and accept. And so I was standing in the shower, my head spinning. I actually had to hold on to the shower, not to fall down. That's how overwhelmed I was with this realization. And after that, the last regression, the last two regressions were about my ego. The ego regression was when I saw that, again, I used my willpower to force life outcomes I imagined out of pride. And this specific regression was completely crazy. I saw myself in a remote galaxy somewhere, and I saw myself defeated by the enemy, some intergalactic enemy, and thrown on a planet inhabited by a snake-like monster that created this kind of wealth, a web of tunnels, but life tunnels that were eating whatever was getting inside those tunnels, dissolving them with a kind of stomach juice. Can you imagine? Insane. And so I saw myself being digested by this thing. And what I was thinking about is, oh my God, how my planet people are going to continue fighting without me, and feeling very disappointed with myself for letting my people down because I lost and because I'm being eaten alive. And what I saw when I got into that space that's called life between the lives, if you've done or maybe read about regressions, life between the life is the space when all of your learning is taking place. If you do past life regression, once you see yourself die, you go into that place where you are connected directly to this universal, like unified field of possibilities, or universal wisdom, or high aspects of yourself, whatever you want to call it. I call it my inner wisdom. And so that's where you can meet your spirit guides or your angels, connect to the source, God, whatever fits with your value system. And what I saw when I connected with the higher aspects of myself was that it was pride and it was ego. I was overestimating myself, my importance and my significance. And I was taking way too much upon myself to be the swinging vote of my planet's survival or death. and what I saw that I should have done to live that life more harmoniously and to live my current life more harmoniously is to let go. Let go of that responsibility because it's not mine, and let go of this idea that I have to do something for the greater good. But most importantly, let go of the notion of me, ego, I am. If I fail, I am bad. If I win, I am good. What I saw in that regression, in that space between life between the lives, is that there is no me whatsoever. I saw that I am just a drop of the ocean, but that I am the ocean, and that individual drop does not have identity, if you will. And when I felt myself a part of something bigger, part of the ocean, and when I lost that individual identity in that life between the life space, I felt this immense relief, because I no longer had to live to anybody's, and first of all, my own expectations, which had been so hard for me. I could just be whatever I was, and it was okay. Whether I do something, I succeed at something, or fail at something, whatever it is, it's okay. And the next and final regression that helped me, by the way, the moment I felt myself as a drop of the ocean, I felt something that I have not felt in a single regression, and I had over 100. I felt this really massive jolt of energy, like right around here where Manipura is, and it was as if something exited me. And it was borderline violent. It was like, vroom. And I just felt like there was a hole in my body. And it was very intense. I was breathing heavily. I could barely stand it. And I asked for this space in my body to be filled with unconditional love. And what I saw was that that energy was that extra responsibility, that ego that I took, that pride that I took on, and that I was so attached to. And so that regression took 2 or 3 days to recover from. And then the last regression was the one where, again, I saw myself resisting and loathing having to be incarnated. And that's when I received an affirmation. And that affirmation to make my life easier was, I am light. And what I saw is that in the many, many incarnations that I had, because I felt, and because I had this ego, massive ego, I should say, I felt that my mission was to bring light. And I dove into the darkness with so much enthusiasm and eagerness, and I tried to transform all the darkness into light and love, that the darkness completely took over, and I got lost in the darkness. And that's why I was depressed most of my life. And I saw that the darkness absorbed me for eons, for millennia. And what I saw is kind of like going to the bottom of a very sticky swamp and just being completely submerged into darkness. And it was kind of like darkish, greenish, this like gluey substance that completely took my light. And I went dark. And I saw that when I went dark, I did a bunch of shitty stuff too. Oops. And what I saw in that moment, in this regression therapy moment, was that that was not the way to transform darkness into light. The only way to transform it was not by fighting dark, which is impossible because it's actually so powerful here. And this is why we are here. This is why this whole thing is. To go through the darkness, to understand our light. And so when so what I saw is that the way to transform dark and to win over the darkness is by just being, by being the light. And two things happen when I can be that light. First, everything that comes into contact with me, actually this is second. Wait a second. When I'm being the light, this is when my light cannot be taken out. So I will be always light. And on the inside, I will feel light. And I will feel good and harmonious. And I will be love. And the second thing that happens is when I'm being light, everything that comes into contact with me transforms into love and light. And so this is the way to transform darkness instead of trying to fight. It kind of sounds like it's a slower way, but it's the only way, and it's the only way that becomes like a quantum leap somehow. When I was in the regression, I really saw it very clearly. And so since then, when I had this regression and I saw that when I feel dark, I have to tell myself that I'm light. I am light, I am light, I am light. And the next day, surprise, I wake up in the dark again, and I wake up sad and anxious. And so I start trying to feel like I'm the light. First of all, I just try to say, I'm light, I'm light, I'm light, I'm light. And then I decided, okay, let me imagine that I am light, visualize myself as light. And I tried to do that. It didn't work out at first, but then I just decided, I allowed myself to make shit up. I told myself, let me just imagine it. Let me just make it up. I won't see myself as light because I don't have clairvoyance, but I can use the power of my imagination and I can imagine that I'm light. And that's what I did. And in that moment, when I was able to imagine myself as light, something really magical happened, because the moment I imagined it and I just made it up, I felt like I was light. And in that moment, I was just engulfed with this feeling of love, eternal, unconditional, no strings attached love. And it felt so amazing. It felt like happiness. It felt like being in love. It felt like being inspired. It felt like the most joyous moment of my life. And I felt so much gratitude, and I just felt like I expanded so much. And this this visualization maybe lasted a glimpse, a split second, yet it had such a profound effect on me. It was really amazing. And so that happened 6 days ago. And since then, I am being manic about imagining myself as light. And I have to say that at least 3 of those days, I am doing so much better. And this is a massive victory for me. 50% feeling good, 50% of the time. This is really like a crazy, unbelievably great ratio. And if you're still watching this video, you probably can relate and you know what I mean. So the point of my story is keep going, keep doing everything that you are doing, and know that you will get there. 2, why don't you try doing it my way? Just imagine yourself as light and see what happens. I imagine myself as a bright white light, oval shape-ish. And subsequently, as I started practicing imagine myself as light, I was able to expand that light. And so the oval took the space of the entire room, and then the entire apartment, and then a couple of floors above and below. And every time I succeeded at imagining that, I felt amazing. So the darkness is still there, but you can turn the table around, and you can make light stay in you. The books that I've been reading that have been helping me, one is called Untethered Soul. I don't remember the author right now, but Untethered Soul, you can find it, I'm sure. And that was an amazing book. I got the gift of this book a few years back, and I could never get past the first 20 pages maybe. And I didn't understand why this friend gifted me this book. And a couple months ago, I opened it by chance. I did not even know what that was. I just opened and started reading, and I couldn't put it down. And that book was so important for me in turning the tide. And then the second book that I'm reading right now is called Frequency. It's written by a lady who's been doing this healing for many decades. I don't remember her name either, but I don't see my phone close by. But how about this? I will write both authors' names in the description section of this video. And so the books following inspirational people on Instagram, helping other people, and just keep fighting, keep putting one foot in front of the other was what really, really helped me. So I really, really hope that anything helps you as well. And I am still feeling sad sometimes, but what I realized is that the most important is to constantly remind myself to trust and accept, trust and accept. Trust that this moment is the most perfect moment created for my growth and created for my highest good, and accept the situation as the most perfect situation for me in this moment. And one more thing, what I was reminded of in this frequency book today was that reality is shaped by our beliefs. And the author gave this really wonderful science example of observer effect. When matter and waves become one or the other dependent on who is looking at it, the optionality. And she said, basically, the reality you believe in, that's the reality that you will materialize. And this is just another reminder that even when we feel like we are submerged deep, deep, deep in the dark ocean, we have to force ourselves, if we must, believe in the most beautiful outcomes. And we have to keep dreaming and have to keep imagining fairy tales and the most amazing adventure, love, and abundance that our hearts crave. So with this beautiful reminder, I'm going to leave you. Please email me or get in touch on Instagram if you have any questions, and let me know in the comments if this video helped you in any way at all. I will be so delighted. You will make my day. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Mwah. Lots of love. Bye.